Today we will meet Nicole Wells, the social media manager at Amazon. Nicole is a storyteller and strategist with over a decade of marketing communications and social media experience. She's currently a social media manager with the recruiting engine team at Amazon, where she uses her expertise to help attract tech talents. Nicole, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to do this today. And always chat social. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, great. I'm also super excited about this talk. But let's start with the beginning. Please briefly tell us about how your career started.
It's so interesting. I had to actually think back to college. So I was a linguistics major in college. And so I had taken a class and I'd always been interested in like language and this intersection of language and how it affects the way we communicate with each other. I ended up focusing in sociolinguistics, which I feel like is appropriate and also something that most people don't even really consider. And so at the end of my college career, I ended up taking a class that was talking about language within marketing. And I was like instantly hooked. I knew I wanted to do comms and communications, but I just didn't really fully realize like what that meant and how that eventually would lead to social media. So I went on to grad school. I got a master's in PR. I thought like the only way that I can really be in comms is like doing public relations, and I have to work directly in the field and, writing press releases, everything. And then I worked at an agency out of college, and honestly, it wasn't a great fit. I didn't feel like anyone actually wanted me to do communications. It was like really like glorified like project management, admin work. So then I had the opportunity to move to DC, and I just started searching for smaller like roles, smaller agency work where I could get in that have smaller teams. I could kind of get that grit going, like, and, being able to do everything. And that's like how I ended up at one of my previous companies, which is PBS, which is Public Broadcasting Service in the United States. And so it's like a well-known nonprofit that focuses on television. But I ended up being in that comms team, and I was like how they say like a girl Friday or a Jill of all trades instead of a jack of all trades. I did everything. And by doing that, I quickly like gained the attention of some senior leaderships, and based on some of their advocacy, was able to move into other roles within the team directly focused on publicity. And then that's really when social media started to become that second screen when you were watching television. So the days of like that appointment, it was still appointment television just so that you could be on Twitter and see what was trending. And so a lot of our leadership took a huge interest in that, obviously, as we were working in television, and we were kind of given the ability to just test and learn. And with the support of that, we were able to create our own, we created kind of tools for our other station partners to use. And we just, it was like, I always call social like the Wild West, but it was always like, it was really like that because everybody was learning. Everything was organic. Who can get to 1 million Facebook fans first? Like those things were like huge deals, like where you didn't have like kind of like the model that we have now. And so it was like a huge opportunity to just learn. And so we were doing that in addition to our advocacy work. And then it just became something more. And then as I started to explore other opportunities further on in my career, they all ended up being social media related. So if I hadn't had that experience of just being able to like run and gun and test and see and fail and, just play in the space, I don't think I would have ended up where I am now. And I'm immensely grateful.
Yeah, great. I really think that testing is important, and playing with all that social media involves is really important. Mm-hmm. You are now the content marketing and social media strategist at Amazon. Mm-hmm. Please tell us, what does your day-to-day schedule look like? Because I'm pretty sure that each day is unique.
Yes and no. I mean, in my current role, I'm really responsible for a niche audience. So I've had other roles where like I've been responsible for the entire corporate strategy and had to be on call for like anything that like, was like late. But not in my current role. I really get to focus on what it takes to recruit like a particular type of tech talent. And so I have very defined goals. And so I think there's a lot of beauty in that, as compared to the previous role, even though I think it's amazing to like be able to feel like I am responsible for a full corporate strategy. I think every morning I start my day off, instead of in this role, looking at the data. So I start off and I look at like, okay, well, I'm running lots of campaigns, advertising campaigns. How did they perform? Where do I need to optimize? Where do I need to, do I need to pause? Do I need to consider something else? Like, how is that tracking against like our current goals? And then I dive into, of course, like email, making some priorities for the day. And then I get to spend a large chunk on content creation, and content creation is challenging. I think it's the part that folks don't see that actually takes the most time, right? Like you have to, if I'm doing recruiting, then I know like the key motivators that are going to make folks think about applying when they're going through all of the possible social networks that they're going through, right? Like they're scrolling all day. So like, what about the piece of content that I'm giving them is going to make them say, hey, let me stop what I'm doing, put a pin in this to apply later, or apply now. So I spend a lot of time on that. And of course, we have meetings and I try to check in with what's happening in social, because that also affects what's going on as well. And then I always take that time. Like I have to have a set time for writing, because I have to be able to like write really bad content in order to get it to a place where it needs to be good. And so I spend a lot of time doing that. But then I also have lots of meetings and various projects. I get to work with different teams across Amazon, working on particular employer brand initiatives. And so I get to spend a lot of time just thinking about what would be best, because my goal is not quantity of content, it's quality of content, which is a lot different than some of the other roles that I've had previously.
Yeah, I totally understand. So let's say some of our listeners are not yet social media managers, but they are aspired to become one day a social media manager. What are the essential skills they must develop in order to become a social media manager?
Yeah, I think one, you have to have interest in the field overall. Like you have to find something about it interesting beyond the content that you're seeing, right? Because let's think about it. Everyone, if you have TikTok or Instagram or something like that, like everyone has an interest in the content they're seeing, but you have to be able to like have some sort of interest in the overall field, how these things come together. Are you reading blogs? Are you listening to podcasts like this one right now? Are you able to think strategically? Because I think that people have this impression that social media is easy and they think it's a clever quip, right? It's a clever comeback, or, it's a trending reel where we used music that everyone else is using. When you're taking this on as a career and you're thinking about using this for brands, you have to understand the metrics and how your work, understanding the metrics that are going to matter to the stakeholders that you have and how your work is going to fulfill that as well. I think that's a key piece that people forget. And then I think it's obvious, but you kind of need to be a good copywriter, or at least you need to be able to fake it pretty well till you make it there. It's really helpful to the process if you understand language. And that doesn't mean like understanding like proper grammar and all that, although those things are immensely important. It's really about like, can you take language, interpret it for your audience, and then still have it represent your brand at the same time. And the biggest one I'm going to say is you have to learn how to manage your emotions, which it's a soft skill, right? It's like not a hard skill. You could take all the classes on writing you want, but you got to be able to manage your emotions, not only yours, but also your executives and who you report to. You're going to get a lot of opinions on how to respond, if you should respond, what your content is, how you distribute it, etc. So you need to be able to take feedback. You need to be able to inform others about the intricacies of how social media works. And you have to be able to do that in a way that still possibly uplifts people or makes them feel heard in the process, although you're the expert. I think that social media is like one of those roles that everyone thinks that they can do that job. And although we know that that's not true, like you still need to be able to manage those folks that just want to have a part in it, because the beauty of social media is that everyone does feel as if they can participate and partake. So you have to take that enthusiasm, which doesn't always show up as enthusiasm, and harness it and really help shape people into an outcome that everyone can feel good about as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think people should understand that being a social media manager doesn't mean just you post on social media and you spend the rest of the day scrolling on Instagram and having fun.
Yeah, no, I think that there's this real expectation that that's all we do. And it's like, no, like I'm in data for, a large part of my day. I have to build the campaign. I have to see how it's performing. We have to respond to comments. We have to be able to engage and do all of those things. And that is not just, that doesn't just take 5 minutes out of your day.
Yeah, exactly. So 5 years ago, there was Facebook. Facebook was number one. 3 years ago, let's say Instagram, and now everyone is talking about TikTok. How would you describe social media today?
I said it earlier, and I'm still going to say it again. Social media is still the Wild West. Like, I don't know if I'm a millennial, so I'm going to date myself. There used to be this game called the Oregon Trail that was on like computers when we were first learning computers, and it was all about like the journey west. And it still reminds me of that, right? Like everyone is trying to get gold. They're all trying to get to the West and dig for gold or whatever they're looking for. And they all want to own like a piece of the pie and like, have this fantastic, be able to gain whatever they want, wealth or accumulation or whatever it is that they want. And some caravans, they have more money, more resources, but there's always like challenges along the way. I think social media is still at that standpoint. I think we're at different challenges than before. When I first started social media, it was like everyone was just like figuring this thing out and it was new and cool. Then it was this road to optimize it in terms of, can this be financially sustainable? Can these companies build lasting entities that, can change the world? I think we've seen that has happened. But now I think we're at a different place. We're at this crossroads on several fronts. We're at a crossroads in regards to data. We're at a crossroads in regards to privacy. We're at a crossroads in regards to like free speech, what's bullying, what's harassment, what's trolling, who gets to define what that is, who gets to make the rules about that, what are the consequences for that. And then legal, I think it's all wrapped around in that as well. And we know that based on wherever you are in the world, like government regulation or legalities and all of that, they usually grow much slower than the actual technology is changing and the way that the people are changing with it. So I think we have some really tough questions that we need to address as a collective, as the world of social media, because that's the beauty of it, right? We get to connect and we're not in the same city, same state, same country. We all get to connect with one another. And I think these problems have to be addressed more so as a collective as the world continues to evolve and change. Yeah,
I agree with this. So you mentioned earlier that you have many tasks every day. What are the most significant challenges you faced in your career? Because there is the good part where you talk to people, go to meetings, create campaigns that people love, but I'm sure that there are some hard times.
I was talking about this question with a friend of mine who's also a social practitioner, and we both came up with the fact that it sounds simple, but everyone wants to go viral, right? Everyone wants to have like their viral moment, and even brands, I think, do as well. I've worked for other companies, I've done freelance for a time, so I know like everyone wants to have that viral moment. And sometimes that's just not. I'm not going to say it's not possible. It's why. like, let's investigate that question. Like, what does that really mean? Does that really mean that you want popularity in a particular moment, or do you want like sustained profitability or whatever it is that your actual goal is? So I would say that's like the challenge in terms of like, managing those expectations and emotions and like what's really possible with the budget that people are providing you, right? We can provide you this, but if your budget doesn't suit that, especially with the way social is today, a lot of it, you're not going to just organically, they build a tool for you to organically go viral for a short period of time. And then they use that to optimize for folks to spend money to get that type of reach, or at least that's like kind of the pattern that I think we're seeing over time. So you really have to think about, I would say that's like some of the challenge in working with your stakeholders and working with clients. But I've also had like a few other lessons recently. I was thinking about like things only take the time you give them. Like I was talking about like content, how you spend time on content creation, and thinking about like, well, how am I able to look at data and manage content and, like I have to set aside the time. I have to give it a time and then make sure that it fits into that time, no matter what I'm doing. And then I was saying like beginning without expectation as well. And that's one of the challenges because like everyone wants to go viral, right? So you start writing and you start putting that pressure to make the content like be something that it's not. So you don't really ever get to be in that creative flow state. I mean, I think that's a challenge. Like when you're a social manager and everything's coming at you, the comments are coming at you, the data are coming at you. You need to be able to write this report. You need to be able to present and create content. Like we have to just be able to like create for a few minutes without expectation. And then reevaluate to make that better. And then finally, like the last lesson, it's interesting. My dad told me that my career will never be a ladder. It'll have peaks and it'll have valleys. And then sometimes it'll stay stagnant. So be open to all possibilities. And yes, that's like based on like career advice, like what job am I going to take, which road? But I keep that be open to possibilities kind of as a quote near me all the time, because every day I need to be open to the possibility that I'm not the expert at this, that maybe this other person's opinion, could help sway the way we're thinking about things. So I would say that has also, doesn't sound like it, but it sometimes can be a challenge, especially when you've been in this field for so long.
Yeah, I agree. You said something really important that today everyone wants to go viral, to create engagement, to create the best post. What do you think there are? Do you think there are some key elements to create the best engagement or to create the best social media post?
I do, but it may surprise you a little bit. I do. Because I have a comms background. I'm always focused on the end user, like the end customer. So you have a company, the company wants you to know X, but your audience only cares about Y. They don't care about X, but the company really wants them to know X, right? And so I always ask, like, what does the audience want to know? Like, why should they care? This used to be a question I would ask a lot and would annoy people, but like, why should they care? If you start there, it's going to be challenging starting there. Let me start off by saying that it will be challenging. However, at the end, if you can build that bridge between the X and the Y, that's really where you create the magic. That does not necessarily mean going viral, but that could mean an increase in web visits. That could mean that you may get more engagement with less impressions. That may mean that we're getting the message in front of the right people and it's actually converting at a higher rate than something that goes viral. So I think if you can build that bridge and spark that imagination like that, from there, you have some place to go. And on top of that, if you're able to use that to evoke emotion, because you understand your audience so well, you know what they want to know, you know what you're able to give them, then you can, I think that will help build, the best type of posts or, campaign that you want. I think that in addition to that, I don't exist in a vacuum. I consult others. I ask other people on my team. I ask other people that I feel are expertise or leaders, or sometimes I build kind of feedback loops to ask an audience member that I'm intending to go after, does this, what do you take when you read this, or what do you take when you see this? I think creating that loop is important. And if you involve folks in the creative process from the beginning, you generate your best work. I think you generate what's most effective.
Yeah. Actually, I always say that knowing your audience is really important, because you can spend 2 hours creating the perfect Facebook post, and your audience is on Instagram. So you are wasting 2 hours and you can just take your phone and make a short video and post it on Instagram, and that would be a success. So knowing your audience and where they spend time, I think it's really important. It's essential.
Absolutely. And it's not just about like where they spend time. It's about like what type of content they engage with.
Yeah,
I'm running tests constantly. I'm always testing. Between one test I did recently was like, does a 15 or a 30 or a 60-second video work better? Like, we need to know, like, and does it matter if it's organic, or does it matter if it's paid? Like, those seem like, I don't, one of the things I think that's a misconception is that like, we're not data driven when I feel like we're some of the most data driven folks out there, because it's so hard to figure out what's going to go viral and what's going to quantify. So we have to be able to be in the data to like figure out like what's working well, and what works this week may not work the best the next week. And so we have to be open, but then we have to be able to like hone in like very niche and figure it out. So.
Okay, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about campaigns. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me the steps behind building a successful social media campaign? Because I'm sure there are a lot of people creating campaigns out there and they are wondering, where should I start?
Yeah, I think there's so many methodologies out there, and I think any number of methodologies can work for you based on how you work. So I think one thing you need to know is, how do you work best? How does your team work best? But the thing I always start with is like, what's the end in mind? Like, what is the end goal? What's the goal of this campaign? And once you know what the end goal is, then you go to the audience again, like we were talking about. So what's the end goal and who's the audience? Then from there, however you organize your ideas, however you brainstorm, however you get feedback and buy-in from other groups, I think that depends on your company and like, or how you work as an individual. But you have to know it at the beginning, like, what's the goal of this at the end? I've had in my past at other companies, I've had people want to run campaigns, and I'm like, well, but what's the goal? Like, is the goal to satisfy this campaign so that we're getting something out of it? Like, what is the audience getting out of this? Is this a vanity campaign for ourselves? Is this to please some stakeholder that doesn't actually understand social? Like, I think you have to be able to navigate that first, because then you're putting all your time and effort into this campaign, and yeah, it might be successful. It may go viral, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to make money and you don't get anything else from it, or you don't get for instance, if we take my experience at PBS, if we don't get viewers to the show from having this thing trend, if we don't get views on YouTube of the clips, if we're not getting more subscribers, if we're not getting, I kind of call myself like an industry agnostic. Like I hop around industries doing social. So like, if I'm not doing, getting whatever it is, whatever that end customer is supposed to do, if I'm not getting that, was this campaign truly successful? Well, but if we're not getting that, but these stakeholders are very, very happy, then maybe it is successful. So I think once you figure out like what the end goal is, no matter how you organize it and begin to build it, as long as you you have that end goal in mind, and you know what engagement metrics you're going for, the rest can build on its own, however you build a campaign.
Yeah, that's true. So if you could teach me, let's say, only 3 things about social media, what would you teach me?
I thought about this question a lot. And first thing is you got to be flexible. Be flexible because social media can change at any moment. I say it's like a newsroom on steroids, which is what they equate Twitter to. But if you think about it, it's like, it is, the average, they used to say, I don't know if this is still true, like the average tweet has a lifespan of like 8 seconds. Like things can change very quickly. People's attention spans are shorter. Like, you have to be able to be flexible. You got to be able to pivot. I would say be discerning is my next one. It's not monkey see, monkey do. Like, yes, that some of for instance, Instagram with Reels, sometimes TikTok, based on like, sometimes it's built that way, right? Like you use this trending audio to get more views to your Reels. Great. But can everyone actually do that? And even if you're using this audio, if your reel still sucks, excuse my language, but if your reel is not great, like, sure, people might view it, but they're never going to look at they're not going to actually go to your profile and figure out who you are. So you don't have to do everything that other people do. Like that goes back to like, remember, like keep the audience in mind, which leads me to the last one. Remember your audience. Like it's always the most important thing. Like what do they want at the end of the day? Now, if you're trying to build an audience, then that's something else. But at the end of the day, everyone knows their core customer. So if your core customers, like you said earlier, if you're building Facebook posts and your core customers are on Instagram, that's a waste of your time. That's a waste of your resources. But if your customers are on Instagram and they actually like to read the text of the post and all you're doing is going live or all you're doing is reels that don't have any explanations, you're still not doing it right. You're still not giving them what they want and what they need. And so the bridge is again between what you want to tell them and what they want to know.
Great, Nicole. Thank you so much. I have one more question for you.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you and follow you?
Yes, well, I am on LinkedIn. On there, you can look up Enjoy Wells. So that's NJOYWELLS. I'm also Enjoy Wells on Twitter, although I really only tweet about TV. And I have fun there, so that you can find me there as well. And I'd love to engage with you and talk more. So feel free to reach out.
Sure, Nicole, thank you so much. It was really nice talking to you. I took notes while you were talking.
Thank you. Well, I'm so glad that we got to do this. And I love what you all do about really diving into the lives of social media managers and, what we go through, because I think that there's a knowledge gap there, right? I think people think that we just look fantastic and have fun all day.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.